Hello again, Cassia colleagues. Welcome to a video here in our resiliency series that's going to focus on self-compassion. This is connected to the pillar of self-care. If you have not watched our first video, which is called Introduction to Resiliency, I think just pretty simple basic title, I'd encourage you to go back and watch that one before you proceed with this one. If that doesn't work for you, of course, this one will still make sense as well. So quickly to recap, what we want to be doing here is strengthening you as our staff who are serving our residents and tenants and clients so that you can be as grounded and as whole and as nurtured as possible so that you are as full with well-being so you can give that to the folks that we are serving, especially in this time of COVID-19 where we are called to do things differently than we ever have before. Self-compassion is a strong pillar of resiliency to be focused on. So let me share again of some slides that will really help us dig into this a little bit more deeply. Okay, so quickly, we have these 5 pillars of self-compassion. And our self-compassion, again, is something we can cultivate, practice. It's not a stagnant thing. It can change, ebb and flow. The good news is we can actually rewire our brains by catching how we think and looking to see if that's life-giving or if it's preventing us from really living into our giftedness. So if you have not had a chance, again, as I said, to do the first video, this is an exercise that we focused on in that video. And so how has this been going? If you've been doing this exercise, reach out and tell me how it has been going, giving yourself permission. And if you found as you were doing this that this practice kind of turned into a prayer, that is great. Some people, if this doesn't connect, if they're not quite comfortable thinking about it as, okay, what do I want to pray to God for in this moment so I can show up in who God's created me to be? Sometimes that will connect for people. Okay, so again, circling back, we've got these 5 pillars. We're going to focus in on self-care, which is big, big, big. I want to just give you a little sampling of self-compassion as a piece of that. So other components of self-care, like getting the right nutrients, getting enough rest, getting into flow. Flow simply means doing something you love to do that's on the edge of your skill set, where it's like mind candy. It's just really super fun. Flow is another piece of self-care. And for me, an example of flow is when I play piano and I sing, because I just love it. And I always am like, just one more song, one more song. I'm only gonna do one more song. And 3 hours later, I'm still at the piano because I love it. I just get in flow. I just want to keep doing it. And it fills me up. So self-compassion, this as, again, a body of research. This is driven by research done by Dr. Kristen Neff. And following with all of the resiliency research, it has astounding outcomes. People who are practicing self-compassion, there's studies, that show people with diabetes, their diabetes improves when they're practicing self-compassion. Like, practicing self-compassion allows us to pursue our goals kind of more in a long run perspective. So it fights against perfectionism. So let's say I really want to get in shape and I have big goals. So perfectionistic mindset would be if I oversleep and I don't get out and I don't run on a specific day, that perfectionism might say to me, I've failed, you always mess things up, you didn't do that perfectly. And then to comfort myself or to kind of put salve on that hurt, then I may engage in destructive behaviors like eating a cookie or something that I don't want to be doing. Whereas self-compassion fights against perfectionism by saying, wait a minute, yep, you didn't run today. You wanted to, but you didn't get out there. That happens. The good news is life is long and you can run tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. So it it accommodates for the humanness when we're setting our goals. So self-compassion, if your initial thought is something like, oh, that sounds kind of frou-frou, or I grew up in a family where we were just about hard work and you just work harder and get the job done. um, Self-compassion might challenge us, but there's really a benefit in switching from perfectionism to letting ourselves be kind to ourselves. So with COVID, we're all learning how to do things differently. And if you find yourself in a mind space where you feel like, I need to be doing more, I have to really perform during this time, think about self-compassion in that context, and how can self-compassion actually help you to perform the way you want to be performing. So from all of this research that Kristen Neff did, self-compassion has three basic components: self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. So let me say a few words about each of these, and then if self-compassion is something you want to dig more deeply into, there's Kristen Neff's written a book simply titled Self-Compassion. This is a book I have, the Mindful Self-Compassion Workbook. So there's a lot of resources available for people. Self-kindness can simply be summed up in words that Brené Brown uses, which are, do I talk to myself the way I would to someone I love? So if I've I'll just go back to the example of trying to get in shape and don't get up, don't go running, don't work out. Self kindness would say, that happens, you know what, you can get right back in there tomorrow. It doesn't make excuses. It just says, yep, it's okay, that happens, no big deal, moving on. We're not going to focus on what didn't work. We're going to focus on what we can do differently next time. So self-kindness is talking to yourself like you would to one of your friends, or to a resident. Think about it that way. And for a lot of us, we maybe talk to ourselves in our heads in ways we would never talk to somebody else. So self-compassion challenges that inner critic, or that destructive voice we might have in our heads. The second piece is common humanity. It's saying, you know what? I didn't get up this morning and go running like I wanted to. I'm not the only person in Minnesota or Iowa or Colorado, North Dakota, where all of our sites might be, Florida. I think I got all of our states who forgot to get up and go running. It happens to a lot of people. And then mindfulness is simply knowing what my emotion is and recognizing it, but not being stuck in it. So to say, you know, I'm disappointed with myself. I am frustrated, and I feel some shame and guilt around that. Okay, that's mindful. So what's interesting is that each of these healthy, strong components of self-compassion, which is just like, think of it like empathy, you're giving yourself and you're doing it, one, so that you can feel more whole and have a better quality of life, but two, so that you have more to give other people. That's the beauty of self-compassion. We practice it in ourselves, and then we have more to share with other people. We can be more kind and generous, forgiving, and merciful with other people. So each of these healthy pieces of self-compassion that we can cultivate are on a continuum with something that's destructive. So self-kindness is on a continuum with self-judgment. Self-judgment would say, I'm a mess up, I'm a screw up, like, I never get out of bed, or I'm too old to get into shape anyway. I mean, it's not very nice. Common humanity is on a continuum with isolation. Isolation simply is like, we pull back. Even in our thinking, we think, I'm the only one who's messed up. I'm the only one who's messed up on a med pass. Um, I'm the only one who didn't speak very eloquently when the surveyors were talking to me, that type of thing. Um, so the problem with isolation, it's a really dangerous thing, because people are made for connection. We're made for each other. And when there's isolation, our hearts hurt. We see that with residents all the time. Like, people need each other and we need to really be heard. And so isolation is a very ripe breeding ground for shame. Shame loves to get us alone. and alone in isolation, not alone and I'm enjoying some solitude. They're different, but isolating us, thinking that we can't be connected to other people, that they wouldn't want to be our friend. And shame will be another video that we could shoot. Okay, so mindfulness is the next piece here. Again, I described that, and over identification is where I'm stuck in that emotion. I'm stuck there for days and weeks and months, and then it becomes my story. Then I'm owned by that over identification. So then every time, just playing with the same example, when I see things on my Facebook feed that talk about friends out there running their 5K or doing 10K, whatever it is, when I see that, if I relive those feelings I talked about before of frustration with myself and some shame, and some disappointment, if comparison creeps in, I'm over identified with those emotions. So we want to practice just a little bit of being able to step back and see things from with perspective. Um, so at the bottom, I've got this link here, and I would encourage you, if this is sounding interesting, to go and take this test on Kristen Neff's website, Self-Compassion, test how self-compassionate you are. All you need to Google is test how self-compassionate you are. You will get to the inventory. And what's beautiful is it scores right there for you, and it will give you kind of the continuum on what's kind of healthy self-compassion, what and where we can, grow in this. So it'll let you know kind of where you fall. And the first time I took this, I was kind of flabbergasted that people actually talk to themselves in their heads differently than I did. I thought it was normal for people to be mean and beat themselves up all the time, every day, all day long. I just thought that's kind of what we did. And so when I was reading these examples, I was kind of nonplussed to think, wait a minute, like other people actually are talking to themselves in their head like this? I don't even know how to do that. So I've been doing this for like the last 8 years, and it's a helpful tool. Please take it as just a snapshot in time. If you do decide to take it, it's just a snapshot in time, because the last thing I want to do is for us to beat ourselves up that we aren't more self-compassionate, right? We just want to take it as a mirror, and then we can move forward practicing some of these things together. Okay, so final thing here in this video before we hit pause and close for this one today. So we want to increase self-compassion. We can do it by how we talk to ourselves. You can come up with like a term of endearment for yourself, just to say when you find yourself being frustrated. So it's not like you need to say it out loud. You can just say it in your head. So it could be something like, you know, like, did somebody call you something sweet when you were a child that really made you feel loved? So it could be that, it could be sweetie or honey or sweet pea. And what matters is it's authentic for you and it feels like it connects for you. Um, and if that feels like too much of a stretch, you're just not sure how to go there, that's okay. That's totally okay. Just be mindful of what are the thoughts that you're thinking, and are they helping you? Um, are they thoughts you would say to somebody else? So here's the second thing that I invite you to practice between for the next week. So as mammals, we crave touch, right? Have you ever been around babies and you just want to like grab? Oh, they're so cute. You just want to grab them. Or there's that joke about, the great aunts who come and they pull your cheeks and, you're so cute. So what's going on there is like that instinctual mammal desire for touch. And so we can comfort ourselves with that same thing. So if you're feeling anxious, you can hold your hands, it's prayer, right? You can hold your hands, you can say a prayer during that time. Or another thing you can do is put your hands on your cheeks and just take a few breaths. I know it's stressful. You can say things like you would say to somebody you love. I know it's stressful. We're going to get through it. I know this is hard. You're doing your very best. You're working so hard. And it just feels like you're treading water. I get it. Okay. Another thing you can do is like put your hand on your heart and take a few breaths. You can put your hand on your belly, take a few breaths. And God's wired us in such a way, like God's amazing. God's created us in such a way that when we take some good deep breaths, it calms our brains. It helps calm our brains down. The final self compassion touch or practice you can start using is simply that self hug, you know, just being kind this way. So give some of these a practice. Let me know how they go for you. And again, let me tell you that we have Dare to Be Resilient workshops happening every month. And also, if individual coaching, like half an hour just to grab some time and talk things through, is helpful for you, we have that available as well. All right. Thanks, everybody. God bless the good work you're doing.